My golden child sister is insisting that I give her my wedding venue, and my parents are backing her up. Last week, during a family BBQ hosted by my parents, my sister announced her pregnancy. Everyone was thrilled for her, and amidst the celebration, she asked me in front of everyone if I would let her use my wedding venue for her wedding, because she found it beautiful and cannot plan it herself right now. This wedding venue is the one my fiancé and I have booked for our wedding in a few months, and we have been waiting 3 years for it to become available. Everyone expected me to agree, but I stood firm and said that while I love her, she cannot have my venue. She started crying and stormed off. Right after she left, Nan told me that I was being selfish because she needed the venue more than I did. I tried to defend my decision, but my mother told me, "You waited 3 years? Would it have been so hard to wait a few more months? When has your sister ever asked you for anything?" A few comments later, my fiancé got really angry with everyone and we left before he could blow up at them. Later, my sister called me in tears, saying it was unfair that I always get what I want, and that I could have done this one thing for her. My brother-in-law then called to apologize for the trouble. He said he had talked with my sister and she had promised him she wouldn't ask. He is quite upset with her now, and warned me that she is blaming me for potentially ruining her marriage, even though it is her own doing. My father has sent me about 5 texts saying things like, "I hope you're happy. Your sister hasn't stopped crying since yesterday." My fiancé and I have decided to remove my sister from the bridal party and replace her with my aunt, who is the only family member on my side. We haven't decided whether to invite my family as a whole. Moreover, my mom took it upon herself to report us. She called my fiancé's parents, telling them that my sister should have the venue because she is pregnant. My future father-in-law told them to get lost and basically tore my mom apart for expecting such nonsense, and warned them they were going to lose me if they kept playing favorites. Now my mom is also crying and calling my father-in-law names. This is turning into a farce. It feels like a bad soap opera. My in-laws are driving over with supper and wine, assuring me that no matter what happens, they will be my support system. Update 1. My sister has been relentlessly harassing me about the venue, saying I'm being unfair, that we're family, and that she asked nicely because she loves me. She sent me a long text about family bonds, and how I should support her, and not be so selfish. My only reply was, "I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sick and tired of bending to your will. My whole life, I've been your servant and your doormat. Remember all the birthdays I had to share with you because you would throw a fit if you didn't get presents? Or when you cried so I would fill out job applications for you because you were too lazy to write your own CV, and mom backed you up? But what hurt me the most was when you ruined my graduation. Remember how you said it wasn't fair I was getting all the attention, so you wore the most expensive dress our parents could buy you, made a cake for yourself, hung up balloons for yourself, and insisted on being in every photo? I'm done. I admit I spoiled you too, but no more. If you want to get married so badly before your baby is born, find a hotel that offers last-minute weddings. I've spent too much time planning my wedding to just hand it over to you, and if you want to ruin our relationship over this, go ahead. I'll sleep soundly knowing it wasn't my fault." She only responded with, "Wow, you must love me so much," and then blocked me. She unblocked me this morning to send this. "Wedding planner, hello dear. I got the message from your mother and will proceed with the rebooking of the venue on the spot. However, this will incur extra costs as we have to change the names on the contract. Please come by my office tomorrow so we can sign the new contract." My parents haven't contacted me directly since the incident with my father-in-law. My older brother reached out to ask what happened, because he got a strange story from mom and dad. Mom had told him that I had previously agreed to give up the venue to my sister before the BBQ, and that I humiliated her. I explained what really happened, and he had no problem believing me. We talked a lot about our parents' behavior, and he confessed that part of his reason for moving away was due to our parents' treatment of us. He told me mom was furious at me for betraying the family. We called my planner, who was horrified. She assured me she hadn't spoken to my mother since the day we booked the venue. She confirmed that even if they called to say I wanted changes, I would have to be present to authorize them. So we informed everyone working with us on the wedding, and they offered to hire security for the day at a reduced rate. Update 2. My sister has now started a campaign against me on Facebook, making constant passive-aggressive remarks and claiming I've made her depressed. I've received numerous messages from her friends calling me awful for treating her this way. I blocked all attempts at online harassment and my sister too. But 2 days ago, my sister's best friend egged my car. I called the police, and my neighbor, who loves to watch people from her window, identified them. She is usually grumpy but actually very nice once you get to know her. After not talking to my parents for several days, they called and asked if we could talk things out. I was wary, but agreed to meet them with my fiancé at our apartment. When they arrived, you could tell my mom had been crying, and I honestly felt bad for a whole 10 minutes. Turns out my sister is just a jerk, with no medical issues or diagnosis. We started chatting awkwardly, then moved on to the main topic. My father first asked us why we canceled the caterers, to which my fiancé replied that we didn't want anything they could hold over our heads. Dad acted offended and said he would never do that, to which I said better safe than sorry. My mother accused me of being disrespectful for talking to them that way. I pointed out how disrespectful they had been over the past few days. We got into a heated argument about the venue again, and my father repeated the "It doesn't matter where you get married, but who you marry" line. Finally, I snapped back, "Yes, Dad, exactly. But isn't it strange how that only applies to me and not my sister? As long as she's marrying brother-in-law, it doesn't matter where, right?" Silence. My father turned red as a tomato, gasping like a fish out of water. My mother started crying quietly again, so I said, "Well, I'm waiting for your reasoning." My father slapped his hands on the table and ranted about family and sacrifices, how a loving family should do whatever it takes to make each other happy. I simply replied, "Like how you tried to make me happy on my graduation day. You remember when my sister smashed my cake because she wasn't in the spotlight?" Silence again. My mother quietly asked, "Why do you hate us so much?" I looked at her and said, "I could ask you the same thing." Silence. My parents knew they had messed up but weren't ready to admit it. My mother tried to guilt trip me, saying my sister was miserable and hadn't left the house in days because people judged her. My father went on about how my little sister needed more time and attention because she's the youngest, basically excusing her behavior. I told them I was hurt because I now saw their blatant favoritism, that they didn't even try to hide the fact that they loved my sister more. My mother insisted, "That's not true. We love you all the same." I wasn't having it. I pulled out a list on my phone where I had documented every instance I could remember of them putting my sister before me. It was a very long list, with dates and specific situations. When I finished, my parents were horrified, red-faced, and near tears. They tried to explain how I was wrong, but I said this conversation was going nowhere. They either set up family counseling and apologized to me, or they wouldn't be invited to the wedding. They left and haven't called since. Update 3. After I last spoke to my parents, they did not budge from their position. I was the bad guy, responsible for my sister's depression and her failing relationship. It got so bad that I had to block them and change my number as they were contacting me through relatives' phones and so on. It was a real bummer, especially during a time that should be so special. I was harassed by my sister and her entourage on Facebook and Instagram, so I simply deleted my accounts. It was mentally draining, but my husband's family, friends, and my brother helped me get through it. I had essentially cut off every family member who gave me grief for keeping my wedding date. My Nan came to my door a few days before the wedding, begging to be allowed to come. I had a long talk with Nan, and she ended up apologizing even though she still couldn't understand the logic behind switching weddings. But she didn't want to pressure me and wanted to be there for me. We hugged, but our relationship is not back to normal yet. The bachelor party was amazing. We were cooking until dawn, and everything turned out to be delicious. My husband made a beautiful 3-layered cake. Wedding day. The morning was calm and relaxing, but then it was time to leave for the ceremony. We were at the venue taking pre-ceremony pictures with my friends when I saw my sister's car approaching the venue. One of my friends ran to get one of the security guards we had hired. I really didn't want a scene at my wedding. She arrived angry and crying, and as soon as she saw me, she started screaming obscenities. Apparently, I am a filthy bitch who made her fiancé break up with her. She was out of control. At that moment, I couldn't help but pity her. To explain, the plants at the venue are watered by a sprinkler system every morning, making the ground a bit muddy. What happened next was quick. My sister bent down to scoop up mud, ready to throw it at me in my dress, when my maid of honor sprinted towards her and pushed her, causing her to fall into the flowers. The security guard arrived seconds later and removed her. With that, I had enough evidence to file for a restraining order against her. I didn't even want to file a police report at this point. I just wanted her to stay away from me. The rest of the day was amazing. I married my best friend, the love of my life, my rock. My brother walked me down the aisle. We all cried during the vows. It was spectacular. Of course, I missed my parents, but it is what it is. The reception was hilarious. My husband and his groomsmen had rehearsed a dance to a Taylor Swift song, and the speeches were like a stand-up comedy show. We left for our honeymoon, and when we returned, I decided to start job hunting in a different city. I didn't want to lose my friends, but I felt like I needed a fresh start. I got a new job at a university in a larger city, and we are currently in the process of moving. But maybe the biggest change, and also the most cliché, is that I am pregnant. It's a classic honeymoon baby. I have only heard through the grapevine about the rest of my family. My sister is still telling people I was the reason her fiancé broke up with her, and that I tried to ruin her life. She has moved back in with my parents and refuses to work. Nan told me the last time she saw my parents they looked exhausted because my sister was acting like a baby. I guess their parenting is catching up with them. I can only say that I am really happy right now. It hurts to have lost family, but in the end, cutting out toxic people was the best decision I could have made.